Yeah, what's your favorite song? I mean, I don't mean
Right
one, but
now,
what
right
song?
now, my favorite song is What's New.
Uh-huh.
You know
These
that
days.
tune?
Oh, of course, I know that too. I'm sorry, I've been playing that tune since I was 15.
Yeah,
Um,
I also like My Ship.
that's beautiful too. My latest tune that I've been learning that I really never, I kind of slept on this is a great song called "Something I Dreamed Last Night."
Oh, I don't know that tune. I'll have to learn it.
Song, yeah. And anyway, that's been my latest. I'm always got something I'm chasing, but um, yeah. Well, I mean, there's just some beautiful, a lot of wonderful songs out there, and my daughter asked me to put 100 songs together that I like to play, and I started to
Mm.
write down songs, and I've got 600 songs now
Yeah, that's great. So
that I.
back in October, I was having a conversation. Actually, probably it was in June. I was having a conversation with Hubert because I studied with him and I kept in touch with him. And he was doing a gig up in New York. And I said, well, why don't you come down to Baltimore? He's like, well, what's in Baltimore? I said, the Keystone Corner. So now he comes like a couple times a year to the Keystone Corner. And whenever he comes, I play with him.
Because you've been living down, we could say that, right? That you've kind of relocated down to Baltimore because
Yeah,
your
sure.
family, daughter's down there, and after
Yeah.
many years in the Jersey area, New York area.
Actually, I've got a gig at Moore's this Friday.
Oh,
So I'm going back up there. And then I go on my tour in October. No, in September, September 21st.
and you're going to play with Kirk
So
Lightsey, which is
Kirk
wonderful.
Lightsey and Frank Ansalem, Gilles Naturel, and Bernd Reiter, I think his name is.
Oh, tell Gilles Natural hello from me. We played
I
quite a bit
will.
together. He,
Yeah.
now I also in your band Insight, I read that there's it's quite eclectic the kind of things you're playing. Like you were playing, it said everything from Bach pygmy music to Shlomo Karlbach, and so you have quite a wide variety of influences uh, in that music. And
Yeah, what I did is we started recording we started recording before the pandemic. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a record that highlighted the different parts of the world that needed to have some light on the world. So the Baca Forest people, the incorrect name is the Pygmies, but they are an incredibly musical oriented
now, is
people.
this Australia? Is this where they are? Where
No,
is
they're
the
in
Bach?
Africa. They're in
Okay, I didn't know
Africa.
where the Baka pygmies are.
Yeah, they're in Africa. And the Hut song that we recreated was about young women and just women in general who would go to the hut when they had their periods. And the music that I heard online was so beautiful, like multi melodies, multi rhythms. And so we recreated it with four flutes and also, put it in the jazz kind of, vibe. And then the Shlomo, the co-rabbon, I was at my nephew's Shabbat dinner, and he sang this song, and it was so beautiful that I did some research and we put it into a jazz waltz. And it made sense because I wanted to focus on the East. This was before all the Gaza things. I mean, that's been going on for thousands of years anyway, but
But before
um,
the thick of it, which is what we're in now.
yeah. So, that's how I began the record. We recorded four tunes. And then, and I also recorded a Native American tune, which was just beautiful, just absolutely gorgeous from the Inuit Indians in Canada. But then the pandemic happened and we recorded half a record. We didn't have the other half of the record. And so the other half of the record was like really different from the first part of the record. So it was like, oh, what do I do now? So I kind of put the record together and I thought, well, what can I name it? And I thought, well, it evolved, so I'll call it Evolution.
Mhm.
So
Makes sense.
that's what I did. So that's what I did.
Now, another reason you're going to Europe was for spiritual purposes. You were involved with
Yes,
something called
yes.
Our Lady of the Blue Roses. Is that how it's pronounced? Or
No, no, it's the Order of the Blue Rose. It's
Order? I'm sorry, not Our Lady.
yeah. It's from Mary Magdalene and it's priestess training. So I'm taking 2 levels of priestess training because I'm also in the midst of getting certification, all kinds of certifications to open up a healing practice. So I actually just came back from massage school.
Okay.
So I don't know,
Well, I
we'll
know
see.
that you've given lectures on addressing the holistic health of the professional musician. I looked up something that you have on your website concerning growth, and and your workshop focused on physical needs, psychological needs, emotional needs, financial needs, and the spiritual needs of becoming a working professional and healthy musician. And you were giving workshops in that, and
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on aspects of being a musician that nobody talks about how we are so enmeshed in playing music that if we don't work, we feel terrible. We have this competition thing. If we don't make a lot of money, the self-esteem goes down the tubes. I mean, we're so enmeshed in music. And so I wanted to just give light to different issues that musicians never ever talk about. So I actually just wrote an article for the Baltimore Jazz Alliance about it. And one of the things I said was you should really not undercut other musicians because you never know if they're going to be on the bandstand the next week. Then what do you do?
well, that's true. I mean, you try to. Of course, that's why I say a leader. Uh, I know who's going to be on my bandstand because I put them there. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
like work, and I don't like working for other people unless I have so much respect for them that I have no, I couldn't imagine. I would agree with them even if when I don't even agree with them. I
Yeah,
would try to
exactly.
go
I'm
along with them
totally there with you.
out of respect.
So,
The
I do want to talk about how interesting it is to be a woman leader and in the jazz field, and also just a professional woman in the field, in the
I'm going to
Latin
ask you about
field.
that. Have you encountered, um, you know, misogyny and,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question, but
Oh,
um,
yeah. I think what's really interesting, what I've learned about men is that when they're in your band, you just have to, you know, you have to give musicians the space to create. You have to pay them what you tell them you're going to pay them, and you have to give them food, and then they'll be fine. But that being said, I've had many, many experiences where men in my band would try to take over. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a festival in Jersey City, and I had hired a bass player who was a sub, and we were doing one of my tunes, an original tune. And lo and behold, he started counting the tune off. So I stopped the band and I turned around and I said, wow, man, that was so nice of you to try to help out. But I got this. So I'll be counting it. Thank you.
well, yeah, and he wouldn't have done that had you been male. I think
I
you're
know,
right.
but
I don't think he
you
would
know,
have done that. Of course,
And maybe he thought he was being helpful, but I mean, I've had many situations like that. But then I realized that all I really need to do is hire the right people. As long as I hire the right people, I don't have to get into all that dumb stuff.
So, sometimes it's funny though, too, because when I was young and inexperienced, my drummer one time, who was a little older, actually, I was counting off and the tempos weren't right. And the drummer says, "Let me show you something." He said, "You're so eager to get into the tune that you go, okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3." He said, "Give yourself a minute to feel the tempo and then
Right.
communicate it to us." And so he showed me, he counted off a tune, and that fixed me. After that, I got
Yeah.
a much better idea. So unless you're really not doing it right, then I think nobody has any right to tell you anything. And if it's
Well,
just
I
because
mean, that's the thing, I mean, even now, if I go someplace where people don't know me and I'm like, oh, can I play? They look me up and down, especially now with the white hair, and they're like, I guess. And I'm like, okay, cool. Then I play and then they leave me alone. But it's constant. It's always like that. And you know, like I said, now I just play with people who I really like, who really can play and who respect me, who I respect, and they're nice people, and they can play. So, I don't need to play all those silly little games, that people play. I mean, you can't imagine how many times when I was in the Latin field where a guy would say, well, if you don't go to bed with me, I'm not going to do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bed with you. So what are you going to do? And any other women in my shoes would just, you know, crumble. But when you have a lot of survival skills and you grew up in New York and you kind of know how to deal with it, you say, well, come on with it. You're going to try to do what? You're not going to do that. You can try, but you're not going to do it. So whatever, kind of whatever, you
well,
know.
I think in reading your bio too, the majority. I mean, you have worked and had some female associates, but it's a mostly you've grown up in a what's been a man's. There's more men that you've played with than women, and you seem to be treated. In your band, you're definitely in. That you're all equal. There's no sexism, and people like Lloyd McNeil and Mauricio Smith, and these were all sweethearts. Like guys that were
Yeah.
absolutely had no attitude about that at all. What was Yusef like? I never got to know him. I only met him one day at a music store, and he seemed like a lovely cat. What was it like to get next to him for a minute? What was?
Well, Yusuf was a very, very, I mean, in my experience, he was a very, very serious musician. He was very serious about his belief systems and where he was going, what his concept of jazz was. I remember asking him once, well, what's jazz? He said, jazz doesn't exist. It's just improvised music. So he was into his own thing, but he was a strong leader. So I was very, very lucky to have some association with him. And Frank Foster, I'll tell you a story about Frank Foster. Frank Foster had a big band and he knew that I did double, so he always would
A
create
loud minority, wasn't it called? The loud
yeah,
minority. Yeah.
so he would always create a flute part for me. And one day he was playing with Elvin Jones at the Village Vanguard, and he asked me to come down and bring my flute. I brought my flute. I wasn't going to play. So he's like, why don't you come up and play? I said, no, thanks. No, that's okay. No, I don't want to play. He said, no, 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 come up and play. I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm not going to play. No. Then he asked me another time. I said, all right, fine, I'll come up and play. I was so scared. And I played, I don't know what I played. All I
It's
remember is
with
that
Elvin,
with
also
Elvin,
with Elvin.
and all I remember is that my knees felt like jelly. And then after I played, he came up to me, Elvin, and he said, here's my number. Give me a call. I want you to come to a rehearsal.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't know who he was. And, a woman alone in the man's world, I
Wait a
was
minute,
like,
you didn't know who Elvin,
I didn't know.
you didn't know the Coltrane Quartet? You didn't know him from,
Well, I kind of knew, but, it was a weird kind of thing because I was just hit on all the time in the field. And I never knew if guys were serious about wanting me to play with them or they just wanted to just hang out with me.
I don't
It
think
was
Keiko
difficult.
let, I don't think Keiko let Elvin get far enough away from her to hit on anybody.
I don't know. I
Because
mean, that's something that I regret. I never called him, but I mean, it's nice to know that he wanted me to call him. Yeah. And then one time I recorded with Jimmy Garrison, because Kit McClure called me up to do a song. And who was playing bass? Jimmy Garrison. I was like, this is cool. So I didn't
Jimmy was
run
one
away
of my
from
best
that.
friends. I was the last person to play with Jimmy on the earth. That's what Roberta told me. 3 days before Jimmy died, I
Oh
was
my goodness.
at his apartment downtown. I ran into Roberta in the street, and they had gotten married. Did you know that? They got remarried the week that he died.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they went up to Harlem, and they'd been living together with the kids, and they were there in the. It was on, Thompson Sullivan, one of those
Yeah,
downtown
yeah.
village streets. And Roberta said, "Well, why don't you come for dinner tonight? We're having Beaver Harris over, and we'll make something." So I came. I brought a dessert. I should have brought steak because they had steak, and I knew there was not enough for everybody because they were poor. And after dinner, um, Beaver, who loved to argue. Beaver would love you say one thing, he'd say the opposite and do this. But he'd say to me, "Man, you played some of that free stuff with Jimmy and me. You should do that. Forget about playing changes and bebop. You already mastered this." I was like
Yeah.
24 years old, and I had not mastered it. But Beaver to
But we
Beaver,
never feel like we master bebop.
no, you never do. But I mean, I never do. But so Jimmy was there, and he only weighed about 90 something pounds. He was on the way
Oh
up,
wow.
and he was sitting there, and Beaver started saying, man, come on, just forget about you. Just play free. That's where you got to go there. That's the only way. That's where the music's heading, and this and that. And then Jimmy very quietly gets up, and then he's lugging his bass, which is twice the size of him, into the
Mm.
living room, and he takes the cover off his bass. Or actually, the bass that was uncovered. I can't remember that. But anyway, he picks up the bass and he starts to play boop boop dee dee da do dee dee, the melody of Solar. So I always had my horn with me, and as faster than you could say whatever Jack Flash, I had my horn out and I started to play Solar with him.
Right.
And I played a couple of choruses and he played time, and then he stopped and he said, I don't have any energy anymore. I can't go on.
Oh, wow.
I gotta stop. So he stopped. So then he died a few days after that.
Oh
And at the
wow.
funeral, Roberta said to me, "By the way, thank you." I said, "For what?" She said, "Well, when you started to play Solar, that was the last time that Jimmy ever touched his bass,
Oh
and
wow.
that we
That's
got to hear
amazing.
Jimmy play." And in my first band, Jimmy was the bass player. First gig I
Wow.
led was theater in New York. Jimmy was my bass player. But anyway, so you met Jimmy. Please tell the story.
Yeah, no, Kit McClure called me to do a recording and we were playing Satin Doll.
Uh-huh.
And there was Jimmy Garrison. I was like, okay, I can do this. I mean, it was like I said, it was I didn't really know if people liked the way I played or liked the way I looked. It was it was a difficult time, and my thing was like, whatever is going on, you need to pay me because I need to pay my rent. I mean, it was I think that concept in my head, that survival skill is what kept me in the music field. Like if people would try to like put me down or just say stupid stuff to me, I would just, try to get me fired. I'd be like, I need this money to pay my rent. So whatever you say, I don't care. So it was very singularly focused.
Yeah.
I've always been very focused. And if somebody said, "Oh, how could you do that? You're a girl." I'm like, don't test me.
New
Don't test
York
me.
is so funny that way too. I mean, I I had Joanne Brachfeld one time. I was supposed to do this concert in Boston, and Albert Daly was my piano player for it. And of course, 2 days before the concert, or 3 days maybe, he gets a gig with Stan Getz, and he's got to take that because it's a tour, and I understand that. But
Right,
everybody, Kenny Barron was busy, even Mike Knock was busy. Everybody, the only one available, not the only one because she was excellent. I called Joanne Brachfeld because we had been
right.
friends, and I'd been sitting in with her at the Surf Maid and everything, and we were buddies. And Joanne came in, and maybe because she was female, or maybe because she was just Joanne, she had it was a bunch of originals of me and Claudio Roditi, of mine and Claudio Roditi. She came in, she handed me back the music before the concert in Boston, said I won't be needing this. She had all the 6 or 7 originals memorized in 3 days, came and played the concert, and the only thing I had to complain about was she wore overalls. It was a very formal procedure of a concert.
Uh,
But I didn't say anything to her, I mean, said, hey, I'd rather you can wear anything you want. You're going to play like that. But everybody was so surprised. And I'm saying, what are you surprised about? They said, oh, that a woman could play like that. I said, it's a piano. It's a woman. What amazes you so much?
yeah, that's.
I
She
mean,
used to be married to
Charles.
um, Charles, yeah, Charles Brackeen. Because I
Yeah.
was living in the East Village then, and I'd hang out with everybody, you know. I hang out with all these different. I remember going to Boomers and I sat in with, oh, actually, Art Blakey Jr. used to have a loft on 30,
On
like 6th
33rd,
Street,
36th Street.
36th Street. And I used to go up there and we would do jam sessions and Hilton Ruiz was up there.
Milton Ruiz would come up, and there was a piano player named Zaid Alim.
I remember him. Yeah.
Zaid Alim would play up
Yeah.
there. I did a lot of gigs when I was in between gigs. The band that Art Jr. and Evelyn had, sometimes they had John Orr on bass, who had played with Monk, and
Yeah.
Wayne Dockery did a couple of those gigs with us too. And
Yeah. I remember Wayne. Wayne was living in a loft and he was having such a hard time living in the United States. He was such a good bass player and he was such a nice guy.
he
You
was
know,
he
I
was in
mean,
that band with Hal Galper too, with the Brecker brothers. And I heard them with Billy Hart was the drummer when I heard them. They had a regular gig, and that was a great band. Hal Galper's quintet with Mike and Randy, and Wayne Dockery was the bass player.
yeah.
And he worked a lot in those days at Sweet Basil and Boomers, and you'd see him quite a bit around town. I couldn't
I,
believe
you
he
know, I just played with Billy Harper. We did a gig with
not Billy Harper, Billy Hart. I was thinking,
Billy Hart. Yeah,
yeah,
Billy Hart. Yeah, I just Jabali, Billy Hart.
yeah, Jabali, yeah,
Yeah, we just did a gig in last January at Dizzy's with Santi Debriano.
yeah.
And I'm trying to get the band to come down to Keystone Corner, but having a hard time booking it.
Well, there's a lot of people in that band.
No, 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 no. This
Santi's
is
band. Are you talking about
this is a
Santi?
quartet.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get this quartet. It'll happen when it's the right time.
yeah.
But what an experience playing with him. That was amazing.
with
That was
uh
really great.
with Wayne,
Uh, What?
playing with
Billy Hart.
oh Billy Hart. Yeah, Billy's wonderful to play with, and Hilton was something. Uh, Hilton, I ran into Hilton one night, the night of Hank Jones' birthday at the Blue Note. There was a bar across the street. There still is, from the Blue Note, and I went in there to have a drink. Hank's birthday had just ended, and I sitting at the bar was Hilton, and Hilton and I, we knew each other since high school. He was, uh, uh, in fact, when Don Pullen had a little problem and couldn't make it on Mingus's band, Mingus called me at 7 o'clock at night and said, "You know a piano player who could take Pullen's place?" And I said, "I got a guy for you." And I called Hilton, and Hilton
Yeah,
was super grateful because that was the night that he got to work with Mingus for 2 nights, actually.
nice. I
And
used to see Angus like almost every week at the upstairs at the village gate.
yeah, well, I played with him once there, and then we moved to the 5 spot, which was called Two Saints at the time on St. Mark's Place
Oh
in
yeah, I remember that place. Yeah, sure.
1973. And but when I saw Hilton, it was very weird. We started talking, and Hilton was further and further out. The conversation got really went around a lot of corners, and then he said, "I got a secret for you. I got to tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "I work for the CIA."
He did not.
I'm thinking Hilton couldn't keep a secret for 2 minutes, and like,
I went to his house when he was living with his mother, and we played some stuff, and then he said to me, you're going to be a star. I said, oh, get out of here, man. I just want to play the flute, make some money. He said, no, you're going to be a star. I said, you're already the star. Because, he was a child prodigy.
oh
He
yeah,
played classical music at like 6 years old. And at that time, for a Puerto Rican man to do that and be successful was amazing. It was
yeah,
so out of the ordinary. But anyway, yeah,
yeah. Well, we were.
lots of good stories. Well, I mean, I'm really glad that you asked me to do this, and fortunately, I can't stay on too much longer. But
Oh, that's
oh,
there were one or two other things. I just wanted to know, in your spiritual search, your childhood, you grew up in a Jewish family, or
yeah, we
had
weren't very religious, though.
us too? Yeah, we were not very. And so you've been to. Is this? Have you played in Europe much, or is this?
No, no, I haven't. I did this thing in Croatia a while ago, but no, I mean, I mostly play, nationally and in Latino countries, you know.
Right.
So this is nice. I like this. I'm gonna have a good time.
Oh, you will. Yeah, and that's interesting. This whole spiritual trip you're on with that. And the other thing was the disease that you, focal dystonia. I wanted to. Uh, you also had a workshop in curing this muscle disease.
Yeah, it's not really a muscle thing. Focal dystonia means a specific movement disorder, and it's neurological. And what happens is the neurons in your brain break, and as a result, the the message system that goes from your brain to your body is corrupted. And so that happened to me, and I went to the head neurologist at Columbia University, and he said, the only way you could play is if I give you Botox in your fingers. And I was like, isn't that toxic?
Whoa.
He's like, oh no, 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 it'll just stay in your fingers. And I looked at him and I said to myself, wow, the head of neurology of Columbia University doesn't know that my finger is attached to my body. And that if he puts something into my body, it's going to go to the rest of my body. So I said, no, thank you. And then I went on my quest and I went to every alternative healer I could think of, including medical doctors and chiropractors and that kind of thing. And then one day I was sitting in my house in South Brunswick and I was watching a program on Link TV. Do you know what Link TV is?
Not,
linktv.org. It's a nonprofit, commercial-free, it's a beautiful TV station. And there was a special on Black guitar players who had disabilities. And they were playing with like butter knives, and they were playing with their feet. I mean, they did so many things to be able to play. And I'm watching this and I thought, wow, if they could do it, I could do it. And so my whole energy changed from being a victim, because I kept saying, why me? Why me? Why me? To healer. And as soon as that happened, people started coming into my life who helped me heal, including this one guitar player who I was talking on the phone and he said, go get a broomstick. Now, I didn't know him from Adam. And I thought, well, if he's really weird, I'll just hang up on him. You know, I was teaching at the time. So he said, take the broomstick and put your fingers on the broomstick. He was looking for a wooden cylindrical, like instrument or something. And my fingers didn't trigger because that was the problem. My fingers were triggering and they didn't trigger. So he said, this is good. You can retrain your brain to create new neurons to bypass the neurons that broke in your brain. And it made sense to me because I knew that every 7 years, your entire system, your cells regenerate. And I thought, well, my brain is attached to my body. I bet I can regenerate brain cells also. So that's when I learned about neuroplasticity. And so what he said is when you have focal dystonia, you already, the neurons that broke are the neurons that tell you to press your fingers down on your horn. And he said, what you need to do is think about picking your fingers up from your horn to create new neurons to bypass the old ones. And that's what I started to do. And I started to heal. And then I realized that the healing process was not just the retraining, but it was, you know, there was an emotional event that happened to me. And that was the impetus that created the focal dystonia. So I started to learn about energy medicine. This was in 2002. And then once I started to cure myself, I thought, well, if I could cure myself, I could help other people. So I wrote an article, and the article like got circulated throughout the world, and people started calling me and asking me to heal them. And I was like, well, I don't really know what's going on, but I can try. And those people who really believed that they could be healed got healed. And I'll tell you a story. This very famous flute player, who's also a screenwriter for music, he's a composer, gave me a call and he said, I've got focal dystonia. Can you cure me? I said, well, maybe. He said, describe the process. I described the process. And he said, well, that doesn't really fit with my Judeo-Christian belief system. I said, then we don't do it. It's not a problem. About 3 years later, I saw him at an event and he came up to me and he said, I just want to thank you so much. I said, for what? He said, you healed me. I said, don't you remember? You said you didn't want to do this. He said, well, something happened and now I can play. So it started me on the trajectory of being a healer, which is not really that you're the healer, but you're clearing yourself out so the energy of healing can come through and you can help people. So
well,
that's that now. What?
I wonder what it was that got in the way with his Judeo-Christian Judeo-Christian
I
beliefs.
don't know. I just left it alone.
I
I
guess you
was
did.
like,
Well,
if
if
that's
you can work
if
that with emphysema, I'm here. I'll tell you, because it's a miserable thing to have.
well, emphysema has to do with breathing, and breathing has to do with your lungs, and your lungs have to do with grief.
Yeah. What young lungs have to do with grief. That's interesting. Huh.
That's where grief
Okay.
is held.
Huh. Well, we'll get into that another time. Um,
Okay.
one thing, who's your favorite singer? What singers do you enjoy the most?
Ella.
You like Ella?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I like to ask people that. And the other question I wanted to ask you was, do you remember the first record you ever bought? The
The
first music
first record,
impacted you?
well, the
Yeah,
first record that I ever heard of jazz was Out to Lunch with Eric Dolphy.
that was your first record of jazz. What about when you were a child, earlier than that? Like, was there a pop song on the radio you were attracted to, or
No, I think that the Merry Melodies, like cartoons that had all those big bands,
right?
I love those.
You like those? Yeah.
Yeah,
Out to Lunch was your first jazz
that
record.
was the
That's
first one. And when I was 6 years old, I was studying piano, and my teacher told my mother that I could play jazz. He said she's got a lot of rhythm. And I remember playing Slaughter on 10th Avenue. Do 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 ba do dee ba 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 da ba.
that's something. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Same
It's
here. Thank you.
you, Andrea, and have a wonderful time in Europe. And give my love to Kirk, and say all my best to Gilles Naturel,
I
and,
will.
and whoever else you run into. Um, see if you can, who you'd enjoy. Glenn Ferris. He's a wonderful trombone player who lives in Paris. American.
Well, hopefully I'll get to do some sessions.
Yeah. Well, Kirk knows all the cats,
Yeah.
and so does you. Anyway, it's been a wonderful time, and we'd
Thank
like
you so much.
to thank Andrea for her presence here today. We'd also like to thank you for having watched this. Also, we'd like to remind you, if you could hit like and subscribe. It may not seem like much, but it means a lot to us. It really does help us out and help us keep
Okay.
doing these shows. So we will say goodbye, good night, good evening,
Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir.
au revoir, and
Hasta
uh,
luego. Hasta
and
luego.
hit like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it.
No problem. Have a
Bye bye.
great day.
Bye bye.
Bye.